I slept in cars, under bridges, on porches, wore the same clothes for a week.
And, in my infinite wisdom as somebody who is addicted to drugs, I decided that if I quit my job, I can make more money as a full-time thief.
And it ended up getting so bad that I was an IV user by the age of 19.
I told him my dad had been using heroin for, so many months now, and I can't stop, and I really, really want to get away from this.
Hi, my name's Heather Wright.
My name's Joseph Wright.
And I'm a grateful recovering alcoholic.
And I have a history of substance abuse. And this is my story. So I grew up in a pretty normal family. Mom and dad were both in the picture. My mom was stay-at-home mom. My dad was the breadwinner of the household. And, everything seemed pretty normal. And, I can distinctly remember times sitting in my dad's lap and him reading Bible stories to me and my brother. And that was really like my first introduction to faith. As I'm growing up, I also remember going to a meeting with my mom, and I didn't know what it was, but I knew it was a darkly lit room, and I got like little apple juice, and I thought that was pretty cool. When I was a kid, I remember my parents always partying, always drinking pretty heavy. And that was just a normal thing in my household, drinking. And then later, as I got older, I realized that it was drinking and smoking weed as well.
Growing up, my household was very chaotic. I grew up with one brother. My brother and I were very close. By the time I was born, my parents were really not in a good place. They were partying and drinking a lot. They were having party buddies over. They were inviting people into their marital bedroom, and everything really went downhill after that. And it basically ended in my dad overdosing, my mom divorcing him and moving in her new girlfriend. And my dad, once he got better, moved in with his parents.
And then as I grew up, I got about, middle school or so. And in middle school, like I joined this group called Royal Rangers, and it was like a church-based Boy Scouts, and I had a lot of fun in there, just learning like kind of outdoor activities and stuff. But I really didn't know what it was all about, and didn't really pay attention to the faith aspect of it. As I got older, I started noticing some interesting things about my family. The friends that my mom would have around. The smells that would be coming out of the room. And, my mom smoked cigarettes and my aunts smoked cigarettes. And I remember as a kid, like going and taking the cigarettes from them and smoking them behind the garage. And like when I would smoke those, like me and my brother, he wasn't really into it, but I was. And that's like one of my first indications that there was something different about me.
My brother and I, we bounced around a lot from family members to friends' house. But when I was 7, my mom left me at a friend's house for basically the whole summer. And nobody in my family knew where I was, and I got so homesick that I needed to call somebody to come get me. And I didn't know any number but my great-grandmother's, and she got a hold of my aunt once I got a hold of her and had my aunt come get me. And the friend's mom just took me in and treated me like her own child. And she put me in, whatever her daughter was doing, cheerleading or, whatever. They had a pool, and like we were always doing activities, and, we were going swimming all the time. And she just, never treated me any different or even made me feel like it was odd that my mom never showed back up for me. When I was 8, we ended up moving in with an aunt and an uncle because my mom lost our home. My mom was partying even more. My brother and I bounced from place to place. We ended up living with an uncle and an aunt for a little less than a year. And we ended up having to leave there and go back to our mom's house.
And fast forward to like middle school, beginning of high school kind of deal, I started recognizing that smoking weed in my household was like normal, everyday thing. Smoking weed. But when I was in this Royal Rangers group, I really enjoyed myself. And I started working and started smoking weed for the first time. The Boy Scout thing or the Royal Ranger thing kind of just fell to the wayside a little bit. I really wasn't paying too much attention to that. And by the time I was 16, I was working, I had a driver's license, I was smoking pot every day. And that just kind of fell off. I was just like, I don't want anything to do with this. And I just started chasing work and getting high. Like that was my big thing. That's what I wanted to do.
And then my brother ended up leaving and going somewhere else for a little while. And I still stayed at my mom's. And that time in my life was very, very difficult. I was 8 going on 9. And that's when the first sexual abuse incident happened. And there were many, many incidents after that. And it was very difficult as a young girl to really even understand what was going on. And they were at the hands of people that my mom was bringing into the home. So for me, it was very difficult to tell anyone about that because I had yearned for a relationship with my mother for so long. And this idea of a relationship that really in reality was never going to be, that I didn't want to tell anyone about that because I thought that it may hinder hers and my relationship. And I really didn't understand. I thought parts of that was maybe my fault. I was too young to understand what was going
on. And then, go all the way up through high school, and things just got real crazy in my household. My mom just went off the rails with drugs and alcohol. My dad was working his butt off to try and take care of us and really couldn't be there for us as much as he wanted to. And then my brother moved out when he turned 18, and I was still 17 years old, and I moved out with him. And when I moved out with him, we had this little 2-bedroom apartment, me, my brother, and a friend, and it was just nonstop partying. And as we were partying all the time, I got introduced to like hallucinogenics and cocaine, ecstasy, and during all this time, we were smoking and drinking like it was nothing. But then I hit 18, graduated, and the job that I had, I lost the job because I had to take a drug test. And when I took the drug test, I practically milked the cup. And they tried to get me into rehab saying that I had a drug problem. And I was like, I don't have a drug problem. I'm just experimenting, having fun. I'm not going to do that. So I quit. I quit working there. And then when I quit working there, I need something to do. So I ended up going to college. And
I had some really good friends in school that I had made. The friends that I hung out with, all of them were involved in church in some kind of way. One of my friends' father was a youth pastor. The other friend's mom went to church every Sunday. So I was always involved with somebody that was going to church. And so I got saved at 12 years old. I always believed in God, had a I won't say had a relationship with. I guess, yeah, I had a relationship with at one point. I was praying, going to church, involved. As much of a relationship you could have at 12 years old, 13 years old. I was always a straight A student. I played sports. I was an athlete.
And then I ended up hanging out with all the hippies and stuff and really partying really hard. And it was the same thing transferred over from the apartment. It was just nonstop party. But this time my GPA started drastically plummeting. And as my GPA is plummeting, I ended up losing my financial aid, so I have to drop out of college. I drop out of college and I move back home. And I got a job in a machine shop doing what I used to do. And when I was working in that machine shop, it was just the same thing. That's all I was doing, was drinking, smoking weed, and just kind of living for the moment. The cocaine and like all the hard drugs and stuff just kind of like fell to the wayside there.
And eventually, basically, I just got tired of parenting an alcoholic and all the chaos that came with it and all the things that I had to endure because of her addiction. I stood up to her one morning and told her it was like just a pivotal moment in my life where I was always afraid of two things. I was afraid of my mom because when she drank, she got very mean. And then I was afraid of losing any potential relationship that I did have with her. So I wouldn't stand up for myself to her. And this day I was just so fed up. I was like the little adult getting ready for school, and she was sleeping in past her alarm clock, not hearing it because she was so intoxicated, and she was needing to go to work. And I woke her and her spouse up, and her spouse got ready to take me to school. My mom was getting ready for work, still intoxicated, and I left and went to school. And I told her spouse that I wasn't coming back and that whatever I had to do, I was going to do it because I wasn't going to put up with this anymore. I went to my friend's parents and I told them what was going on, and I said, I can't go back there. And I really need to know if I've got, if you guys have my back, to fight her in court, that I have somewhere to go. And they were like, yeah, we've got you 100%. And they went down the next day and filed the paperwork for custody, emergency custody of me. And the mom had already been a foster parent before, so she was like already in the system. And the school knew her and knew that, I was still coming to school and everything was okay. And I had the school on my side as well. Like I had mentioned before, I was a straight A student. I played sports. Had many teacher friends, or I used to be kind of called a teacher's pet. And so, but the good thing was that I had them on my side. And my mom was really just bluffing, but she was trying to scare me into coming back. And I just couldn't do that. I knew that that was not good for me. I continued on in high school. I think at that point, then I went into my freshman year. Sophomore year, I played soccer, I swam, I got straight A's, was doing great. My sister and I started to dabble a little bit with marijuana and alcohol. Not really too crazy, just kind of teenage experimental. And I was hanging around some people, some older folks that had some more serious, stronger drugs. And, alcohol could go by, liquor, they were over the age of 21. I started dating one of them. And so basically I had access to, strong pain medication, Xanax, whatever kind of pills. And then of course, marijuana and alcohol. And it was so crazy because it was like once I got that stuff in my system, I didn't have to care anymore. I didn't have to feel. I didn't have to deal with my childhood trauma, the sexual abuse I had been through, the pain and the hurts of, what my mom emotionally had done, like her emotional abuse, the neglect. I didn't have to deal with that. And then I also didn't have to deal with the pain of not having her in my life as well. Just like the idea that my mom is not in my life.
So I was drinking all the time. I was drinking every day. I just turned 21. So I was actually going to bars, going to pool halls, and drinking pitchers of beer at the pool hall while I was hanging out. And then I got my first DUI. And when I first got my first DUI, I blew so high that in order to have driving privileges, I had to have a breathalyzer in my truck. So that pretty much stopped a lot of my drinking. And I was still smoking weed all the time. But then, not even 30 days after that, I got a possession charge for marijuana. And when I got that possession charge, I thought I was going to be smart and trick the court system into thinking that I was trying to get better. So I put myself in an outpatient treatment. And when I put myself in outpatient treatment, I couldn't drink anymore because I had to drive everywhere I was going. And I couldn't smoke weed because I had to pass the drug test to fool the court system into thinking that I was doing right. And then I got introduced to opiates that way. And when I started using opiates, I was like, this is cool. I can get high. If I know drug test's coming up, I can quit taking opiates for a day or two and I'll pass the drug test. And that's what I did for a while. And then it got to the point to where I couldn't find pills anymore, and a person that I was running with was using heroin. And they offered me some, and I was at first a little apprehensive because I was like, I don't know if I want to go that hard. But then I went ahead and used it because I was tired of being sick. And then from that point on, it was off to the races. It turned an expensive drug habit into a relatively cheap drug habit at that time. But then a month goes by, and at this point, I'm just snorting it. And as a month goes by, I really start getting interested into injecting because the person that I was around was an IV user. And they showed me how to do it. They hit me for the first time. And man, it was over after that.
So now, we fast forward, I'm 16 and I am drinking every day, popping pills, partying, and I get to a place where I'm just so depressed that I didn't want to go to school anymore. I didn't have a light in me anymore. I was so, loved being in school, loved doing all these activities in school that I no longer had any interest in. The only thing I had interest in was getting high and drinking, and I chased that feeling. But yeah, I was just on this chase, and I became so depressed. And eventually, my body was trying to process all the trauma that it had been through, and I didn't know how to deal with that. And so I was pushing it down with drugs and alcohol, but eventually, it came out physically. I ended up having something called pseudo seizures, and I was hospitalized for a month having these seizures. And the doctors told me that it was, in my mind, it was because of stress. And I remember thinking, I'm not crazy. This is really happening to me. I can't control my body when it starts trembling, and I pass out, and I don't remember that. I'm this is really happening to me. And I remember feeling am I crazy? But it was the way my body was processing all the stress, and I was having seizures as a stress response, trauma response to all these years of trauma. And I had been with my foster family, I guess you could say, for 2 or 3 years at this point.
And in my infinite wisdom as somebody who is addicted to drugs, I decided that if I quit my job, I can make more money as a full-time thief. So I went ahead and quit my job. And from there, it was just man, it just keeps getting deeper and deeper into the spiral of nothingness. Life just got more and more hopeless as I continued to steal and use and steal and use and steal and use. And at this point, to have a breathalyzer in your truck, in your vehicle, you have to pay for it every month. And I wasn't able to pay for it, so they locked my vehicle out. I wasn't able to drive my vehicle because I didn't pay for the service. So I had my dad come pick me up one day for work, and when he picked me up, he had wondered what was going on, why I didn't have the money to do it, because he knew I was working and making good money. And I asked him to buy me a pack of cigarettes, and he stopped at the store and went and bought me a pack of cigarettes. And when he came out, I told him Dad, I've been using heroin for so many months now, and I can't stop, and I really, really want to get away from this. And he's like, okay, well, this is what we're going to do. I'm going to drop you off at your job. You're going to work. And then when you get home today, I'm going to be there for you. And we're going to load up all your stuff. And I'm going to move you out of this apartment that you're living with these 2 people that you're using with. And I'm going to take you to your mom's house. And that's what we did. That's what we did. And
I, wasn't in survival mode every day anymore. And so my body was starting to heal. I felt safe. And so it was trying to work through those things. And I just did not know how to do that. And since I had began experimenting, that was my way of coping with it. And that began a 9-year addiction that just got worse and worse, that I used as a coping mechanism. I used, it was pills, marijuana, alcohol, and it ended up getting so bad that I was an IV user by the age of 19. And that went on, and it just continued to get worse, all the way to, living on the streets and running with people that have been in the streets for 30 years. And I saw a lot of stuff, and a lot of stuff happened to me. Very dark stuff. I had been raped, I'd been beat. I've seen that happen to other women. I slept in cars, under bridges, on porches, wore the same clothes for a week, didn't shower probably for a week, didn't eat for a week at times. I was very skinny. I was like 110 pounds at one point. And I remember losing some of my hair. My hair was falling out. And I thought, I'm going to die out here.
And I left. I went to my mom's house. And I rode out the sickness for a few days, and then my mom was prescribed prescription pain pills at the time, very low quality, low strength. And she gave me a couple of those to try and help me with the sickness. And eventually, I ended up not being on heroin anymore. Made it through the withdrawals and stuff. And I was just working like little menial jobs, just trying to make ends meet, just trying to get a little couple bucks here and there. And this was like one of the first times in my life that I was not employed since I turned 16 years old. And then eventually, my mom ran out of her pain pills. And when she ran out of her pain pills, she kept pressing me to find some. And I just flat out told her, Mom, the only thing I could find is heroin. And she said, well, then get it. And I was off to the races again. And I started using heroin with my mom. And that became the entirety of our relationship, was using.
And I had a situation that I don't really talk too much about, but I had gotten pregnant by someone that I was running in the streets with that I really had no business being around. That was very, very abusive and put me through a lot. I ended up losing that child. I didn't even know, actually, that I was pregnant for a very long time, about 4 months into the pregnancy, because I really didn't have a period much anyway, because I was so skinny. And the baby had passed away inside of me, and I didn't know it. My body didn't recognize that I was losing the baby. I left the streets and was staying with my dad for a little while. And at first, I thought it was going to be a good thing to be around my family, be closer to my brother and his children. And it ended up turning into a circus. My dad's an alcoholic addict as well, and we began using together. And at that time, he was actually doing very well. He was working, his drinking was a minimal, his using was a minimal, and he seemed really happy and he was doing really well. And I came in as a full-blown heroin addict. And we started using together. And it got pretty bad, and this went on for like 7 or 8 months. And he, basically had asked me to leave at one point, after so many different incidents of things that I had done, breaking in his house, getting in arguments, fighting. So I left, went back to the streets for about a week, and then my brother's 3rd child was born. And I called him to tell him congratulations and asked him, when I could come and see the baby and when they were going to be going home and stuff from the hospital. And he didn't tell me that I couldn't see the baby, but he really didn't acknowledge that I wanted to see the baby, and just kind of kept mentioning that, I needed to get some help and I needed to get better. And, that my dad said I wasn't really welcome over there right now. And he didn't really want to talk to me or see me. And, my brother just kept saying, like, you need to get some help. And of course, I was sharing with him all my fears and my excuses, really, of why, I was not ready to go to rehab.
And, I started bringing all my old friends around, got wrapped up in this forgery scheme and started writing bad checks and caught my first felony by writing bad checks. And at first I was just like, whatever, okay, I got put on probation, not a big deal. Then I kept continuing to write bad checks and got caught again and again and again. And it just led to this huge criminal stuff. I was just involved in all kinds of criminal stuff, getting all kinds of messed up with drugs and alcohol. Not so much alcohol, but just mainly the heroin. I wasn't concerned about any other drug at that point. Like, this stuff took my soul at that point. I didn't move or breathe unless it involved getting heroin or getting money for heroin.
And he said something, and I don't know why it was so profound, but it really changed my life. But it was, stop thinking about it, just do it. It's like, sounds simple, but it just clicked with me that day. And so I did. I hung up the phone with him and I started Googling rehabs, close to me. I called my mom, and my mom is like, what's going on? What's up with you? And I said, well, I need a ride tonight to detox. And she was very happy. And so she came home and took me to detox. And, I will say that there was a lot of hard times and tough memories and things that I went through with my mom. There were also good ones as well. And so she was there for me this time, and she did come pick me up and take me to detox.
When I got put into rehab for the first time, it was either prison or go to a court-ordered rehab. And I chose court-ordered rehab. And when they put me in this rehab, I really didn't want to get clean. I was just doing it to appease the courts. So I'm just moving through this rehab thing, and they had Bible studies there and they had church. So I started going to the Bible study and started going to the church, mainly for a reason to get out of the pod. But I was hearing things at that point that reminded me of my childhood and reminded me of what I heard in my childhood, and really started enjoying what I was hearing. And then I get a phone call from my sister, and my mom died suddenly. They say that it was a stroke. They say that she died of a stroke. And I started drinking immediately after I got out of rehab. I mean, the day I got out, as soon as I got home, I bought a 24-pack of beer and drank myself asleep. And I continued that process on for a while. And then that led me to running into the same people I used to run with when it came to heroin, and I started using heroin again.
So I walk into detox, and they checked me in. My mom stayed until they were like, okay, you can leave now. And I remember giving her a long hug and just crying. Like, I was like, oh my gosh. And it was so crazy because it was like mourning a friend. This is the only thing that I have relied on in so many years. I took my first drink at 13, but I was drinking daily at 16. And I was an IV user by 19, and then I got sober at 25.
Didn't see me. The day I got arrested in front of my dad, his fiance, or my dad, my brother, his fiance, and the next door neighbors. And that was super embarrassing to have everybody see me get arrested, get searched, found with needles, stolen property. heroin, all this stuff. A very embarrassing moment in my life. I get to jail and I call my dad and I say, Dad, I made it to jail safe. And he said, good. Make it the last time you go. And I didn't hear from my dad for over 7 months from that point on. I tried to write him. I tried to call him. No responses. And I finally got a hold of my brother. And my brother just flat out said, Joe, Dad don't want to talk to you. He's mad at you right now. And I kind of understood that one.
So now I'm in this detox and I am so sick. Like, I am just so sick, but it was different this time because I had detoxed before, like at home, at least tried to. And I just remember this was like the first time that I prayed to God in many, many years. I am praying in this detox to God to please just for him to keep his hands on me while, I'm here. And that I really wanted to get better. And I remember there was a couple ladies there that had been through the detox process and they were leaving the next day and they were going to rehab. And this one lady was praying over me as I was detoxing. And I remember at the time thinking this is a little crazy, but it's probably just, my spirit inside of me was fighting. And the lady prayed over me and she wrote me a really nice letter and hoping that I, to get through it and to stick it out. And there were beautiful things in life waiting for me. Little did I know.
And instead of going to prison this time, which I was almost 100% certain that I was going to go, they sent me to another court-ordered rehab. And in this court-ordered rehab, I ended up doing 6 months there, did well, started going to another Bible study, but this time I actually enjoyed what I was reading.
Anyway, so I get through detox about a few days into it. I'm feeling so much better. I'm able to laugh again. I'm able to eat again. I'm sleeping through the night. I'm making friends, as funny as that sounds, but because you walk into a house full of strangers that are sick and going through exactly what you're going through, and we're all coming from different places, but we're all coming from the same place, if that makes sense. And so we just bonded, and it was a good experience.
Through the program, I got hooked up with a mentor, and the mentor was involved in a faith-based outreach program. And they said, hey, there's this recovery program that's kind of like just for housing and stuff that seems like it would be a good fit for you. How would you apply? And I applied for that. And a lady came to interview me for that place. And when she came and interviewed me, she told me, hey, this is a 18 to 24 month inpatient intensive rehab program that's faith-based. And my first thought was, hell no, absolutely not. I'm not checking out of one rehab and going to another. There's no way I'm doing this. There's no way I'm doing this. But by the time I left the court-ordered rehab, I had agreed and accepted the spot there.
And so the staff members at the detox are like, well, where are you going, after here? I'm like, I don't know. I clearly don't have the answers. My life's a mess. So whatever you guys suggest. So they suggested that I go to a rehab. And it was all the way out in this little town with nothing around. So, which is really what I needed. So I go there, and two of the ladies that were in the detox with me are actually in the rehab. So I knew two people walking into it. And when I tell you that I had the best time, I know that sounds so silly, but I think I was just so grateful to laugh again, to wake up and not be dependent on something and not have to, scheme and steal and do things that really wasn't who I am to survive my addiction. And that was just a breath of fresh air. And then I have other family that lives out of state. My aunt and I went and stayed with her for about a year. And when I got there, I flew in, and there was, some drinking going on, not right away, but it was like the next night. And I had so much anxiety. At this point, I'm like 70 or 90 days clean or something, where I've been out of treatment. And I had so much anxiety. I remember going into my bedroom and just holding on to my AA book, because the folks at rehab and detox told me, like, go to AA or NA, do a program, do a 12-step program.
And that was my turning point. That was the point when I'm like, I'm going to give this recovery thing a real shot. So I went to this faith-based recovery program that Monday. I reported to my probation officer, did all that stuff. Got there. And when I got there, I was showered with love from these people. Like, I come in and there's other clients there and stuff, and they're like, hey man, you need some food? I got some food for you. Here's this food. You need some cigarettes? No, I got cigarettes. Okay, that's cool. That's fine, man. And they just kept trying to offer me something, make my spot more comfortable. And my first thought, living in this street mentality, living in this prison mentality, I guess, is if I accept something from them, I'm going to have to owe them something back. But they didn't want anything in return. They just wanted to help me out. They wanted to do for me what somebody did for them when they walked in the building. And that blew my mind, man. That literally broke me down in tears. That love that those guys showed me when I first walked into that program chopped through every bit of defense that I had. And I can actually feel something besides anger and being high for the first time.
So I'm like, okay. And so I told my family, my aunt, that I needed to go to a meeting. So I Googled the nearest AA meeting, and where I ended up going ended up being my home group. I found my sponsor there. They were a bunch of just old timers, people that had a whole bunch of clean time. And they took me in under their wing and just showered me with love. And I remember thinking, like, this is insane. Like, these people want something from me. There's something going on. They were always so happy. They were always laughing, just having a good time. And I thought, somebody has, like, there's alcohol in that coffee. Like, there's no way people are having this much fun and this caring to a stranger. Like, I'm a stranger to these people. And they were willing to give me the shirt off of their back. And the longer I stayed around, the longer I realized that that's just who they were in recovery. And that's who I could be too, and I just felt the most genuine love.
I just started learning more and more about the Bible, learning more and more about Christ, and get another kicker from the courts. They're saying, you have to do this 2-day theft prevention program. And it's going to cost you like $165. At this point, I'm not working. I have no money. I have nobody that'll support me. Nobody that will even give me that kind of money, because I had burned all my bridges. And I'm like, all right, I'm going to call and schedule this class, because if I don't, they're going to arrest me. So I call and I schedule the class. And as soon as I schedule the class, I hang up the phone, and verbally, out loud, I said, God, I don't know how you're going to do it, but I know you got my back. Literally 5 minutes later, the director of the program comes out. Where's Joseph? Where's Joseph? Joseph Wright. I need Joseph Wright. And I'm thinking, damn, I'm in trouble. Like, this is not going to be good. They come up to me and they're like, I have about 5 days worth of work, and God has told me that you're ready. And I was floored. It just completely blew my mind at that point. Like, what? So I do these 5 days of work. Not only did it pay for the theft class, but it gave me enough money to buy a pack of cigarettes, get some hygiene products, and take care of myself for a little bit. And I was just like, man, maybe God really does have my back. Maybe God really is for me. Maybe God really does want to see me succeed. And man, that was like one of the tangible ways that God showed me that he really intimately cared about my life, that he really wanted to be involved.
So I remember working with my sponsor, and I did my list of amends. And she told me to separate them into 3 categories. So one category is for what I'm willing to do, one is what I'm kind of willing to do, and one is what I'm not willing to do. And the first thing on my not willing to do was take care of my warrants. And so I shared everything with her. And it was like a couple of days later, we were at a meeting, and she says, "So I just need to talk to you about your list that you made." And I'm like, "Okay." And I thought we were just going to kind of come up with a plan of how to start my willing to do list. And she goes, "I bought you a plane ticket so you can go back to your hometown to take care of your legal issues." And I'm like, I told you that I'm not really willing to do that yet. And she said, "Yeah, well, the ones that you're not willing to do are the first ones that you need to do. So you're going back and you're going to turn yourself in." And so I prayed about it. And, at this time, like I'm really praying. I'm getting a relationship with God. And I told my family. They said I was absolutely nuts, that I should not be listening to people in AA that I barely know. I haven't even known a year. But, I said, "Hey, this is what I'm going to do because they are in recovery and this is what they think is right. And so I'm going to do what they say."
And I'm, working really well through the program, rising up, learning more and more about Christ. And that was the seller, man. That's what changed my heart on so many things. That's what really changed my life. And there was this pastor that used to come there, and he's my current pastor now of the church that I go to. And he was the first person to tell me that you are not an addict. You're somebody who has a history of substance abuse. You've had some issues just like everybody else in life. He's like, but quit attaching that identity to yourself. You can remember your past and not go back to it without identifying as it. And from that moment on, I really started saying that I have a history of substance use, not that I'm an addict.
And by the grace of God, the judge put me into a drug court program. I knew it was going to be intense, and it was. There was, P-tests, sometimes 3 times a week, sometimes no times a week. You just didn't know. I had 4 classes in the beginning to do a week. And as you progressed in the program, it got less and less until you graduated. I graduated within a year's time, which is like the least amount that you need to do, because I didn't have any hiccups. I had been sober. I continued to stay sober. And that program really helped me to have new life, and really not just like be sober because I had to be, or because I had to take care of court problems, but because I wanted to be, because I had created a new life for myself. And during the time that I was in drug court, I got a new sponsor in my hometown. Her and I became really good friends, even beyond just AA stuff. I had gained a whole bunch of weight in early sobriety, and so her and I became workout buddies, and we were working out and doing the AA program, and really became close friends. And through her, I ended up meeting my husband. We all, it's just like a big friend group that we all went out. And at this point, I'm getting kind of close to the end of my drug court program.
As I'm working for there, I keep feeling this urge to work in ministry. And then the director, the vice president of the recovery program there, offered me a job, offered me a full-time job. And I started working as a guy that just kind of like watched over the desk. And then as I'm watching over the desk, I'm really enjoying working with people in recovery, seeing guys coming off the streets, straighten their life out, watching God transform them from the person they were when they walked into the door to a completely new person. And he gave me a front row seat to watch people be transformed by his power and his strength. And it was amazing. It was a beautiful position to be in. And it just really strengthened my faith, because not only is he intimately involved in my life, I'm watching him be intimately involved in everybody's life that's trying to follow him. And right around 2018, I started going back to college. I decided to go back to a faith-based college, all online, and get a degree in psychology. I found that I really loved that kind of work. And right around September, there's this person that I was hanging out with, her and her husband, doing obstacle course races and just having a good time with each other. She said, we're going to a haunted house of all places. And she said, I'm going to bring my friend along. And she brought her friend along, and that's where I met my wife. That's how I met my wife, was through this person. And from the moment I met my wife, I met her on September 15th, and we married September 15th of 2020.
I really grew. I did a lot of therapy. I worked through a lot of my childhood traumas. And I was really happy at where my life was going. So I meet my husband, and we're all hanging out. We start dating. When I met my husband, and we were talking about getting married, when we were still dating, there was a pastor at a church that he attended. Now, I did not go to church. I was only doing AA. I had went to one church, trying to get back in church. I had a desire to, but I just hadn't found my church yet. And so his church, he said he wanted to do premarital counseling with the pastor of his church. Now, this was during the shutdown, so churches weren't open, or they were getting ready to open. But he agreed that he would meet with us when we were ready. And so we did. We met with him for premarital counseling. And I just remember him being so very kind, very welcoming, very open. And, he, of course, knew my husband, but didn't know me. So he was asking me some questions, getting to know me, my history, just kind of who I was. I remember him listening to my story, and I'm telling him that I'm heavily involved in AA, and that I'm this alcoholic who needs who needs these meetings, and just about my history. And I really focused on my history and not what I was doing now, except for my work in AA. And I remember him looking at me and saying, that's not your identity. You being in AA, or you being an alcoholic, is not your identity. It's something that you did, but it's not who you are. You're a child of God, and you need to start walking in that. I don't think he said it like that, but he just said, you're a child of God. That's not your identity. And it just really stuck with me. And I think that was the first person that really started to change my perception on who I was. And that I didn't have to walk around with this dark cloud over me that's going to be over me forever, that I'm just this hopeless alcoholic who's, yes, now in recovery, but has to be on it every day. And to a certain degree, that is true, and you definitely need it in the beginning. But it just did something for my soul, that I wasn't what I did. That wasn't who I am in my soul.
So I was working for the recovery program, and I got engaged, and then started realizing, like, if I'm going to want to build a family here, I can't be working all these hours. I was working like 50, 60 hours a week. And it's like, that's not going to be conducive with a home life. Getting calls late at night, getting called in randomly on a Saturday because somebody called off and I had to fill in the position, things like that. It's like, I can't do this anymore. Ended up leaving there, getting a job at another machine shop, and started working there. And they matched the salary that I was making at the recovery program, and have just been an amazing company to work for. They've really always taken care of me and done everything right by me. They've done right by me.
I graduate drug court. That following fall, my husband and I got married. And I just really started working on myself. I cleaned up my credit. I got my driver's license. You know, my husband and I were starting to build a life together. That happened. We got married. And then shortly after that, I got a job at a convent working in nursing. And let me just tell you guys that, like, this is how good God is, that I have no experience in nursing. Like, I have experience in taking care of my grandma and great grandma who have dementia. That's it. I never did healthcare, home health care, worked in a nursing home, like nothing. And I thought, these people are never going to hire me. But, you know, I took a chance and went in there. And they hired me. And I worked there for 2 years. And during that time, man, I met some of the most beautiful people that have impacted my life and my faith. The sisters, of course, you know, I mean, you just learn about your faith and about Jesus and just everything just by working there, just by being around them, you know, just by their actions, how kind they were, you know. And you ask those sisters to pray for you, they are praying for you. And you don't even have to ask them, they're praying for you. But I just remember my spirit always feeling very light working there. I met some beautiful women that, you know, were part of the staff, the nursing staff, that really just encouraged me to be the best version of myself. The sisters ended up putting me through STNA school. They paid for it. I completed the school, took my test, you know, took the state test, got my little license number, and I worked with them. I found out I was pregnant while I was working there, so I worked during my pregnancy and then stopped when I had my daughter. But, I mean, it's just the most beautifulest things, like, you know, that I never thought would happen. You know, so many different people has impacted my recovery, my faith, you know, like, and I see all the ways that God was in my life in every stage and every moment, like even in the bad stuff. There was things in my addiction that happened that could have been worse. There were times in my childhood that things could have been worse, or there were people that stepped in that, like, I know that God brought into my life. You know, and just all the ways things turned out. You know, I'm a mom. I get to be a mom today. I get to be a wife today. I get to have a second chance at life, and that's really cool. And I didn't think that I would get that. And the biggest part is, like, I've gotten to heal from my childhood trauma, you know, and that's what kept me sick for a really long time. So I'm very grateful for that. And, you know, I'm just excited about continuing to grow and continuing to learn and to get closer with Christ and continue to be the woman that He created me to be.
On the way. So we got married, we were buying a house, got a kid on the way, we got the house, and when we got the house, we got a dog, got this little dog running around the house now, and then our baby was born, and everything's just been amazing since then. You know, it's just been awesome, and, you know, like, we're still both diligently following the faith, just letting Christ really move in our lives and stuff. And, you know, it's not perfect, and my life is not cleaned up holy, and it never will be cleaned up holy. But what I can say is I no longer have cravings for alcohol and drugs. I don't want to use anything. I want to be honoring to my wife. I want to love my wife. I want to be in a healthy relationship. I want to show my kid, my daughter, what it's like to have a healthy relationship. I want to show them what a solid family looks like. And we're doing that, man. We are doing that together as a couple, as a family unit. And we're just loving every minute of life.
But yeah, I still am involved in AA. If someone asks me to speak, I will. I'll go to meetings. I'm involved in my church. I'm involved in recovery groups and other groups that have nothing to do with recovery. But they keep me sober. And, my daughter, my husband, and the plans that we have for our life, school, and our business just really keep me going.
And so far, that's my story. That's where I'm at. You heard where I was, how it got to that point. You heard how bad it was, and now I'm here. And it's like I still have all my felony convictions. I still have all that stuff on my record, and it hasn't held me back. It hasn't stopped me from pursuing the things that I want to pursue. I was able to graduate college with honors. I'm able to walk more into being a good father, being a good husband. All this is possible from Christ and what He's done in my heart during that whole time that's leading up. Lord willing, in June of this year, June of 2023, I'll have 8 years clean and sober. And it's 8 years removed from a life of darkness, 8 years of living in the light, diligently trying to follow Christ with everything I have in my soul. Doesn't mean I've got it right. Doesn't mean I do everything right. But man, I'm trying. And following Jesus has changed my life trajectory. He has changed my heart. He has changed my mind in insurmountable ways, in ways that I can't even explain to you. He's just made a new path for me to walk down. And if you hear all the story, man, and you see me, you miss the whole point of it. The whole point is that Jesus Christ came into my life, and a radical change in my life came from making the decision to follow Jesus Christ. Hey everybody, thanks for tuning in and watching our story. I hope it gave you an opportunity to get to know us a little bit better, get to know our history, where we come from, and the background that we have. Please like, comment, and share our video, and we hope that this touched somebody, that this may help somebody. Just at the very least show that there's hope to overcome addiction, like we have in our past, and we were lucky enough and blessed enough to find each other and to create this beautiful little baby girl here.
Yes.
And there's more to come from us. You'll be hearing more stories. We'll go into a little bit more detail on some of our histories. So keep tuning in and check it out.
Yeah, and don't forget to subscribe.
Yeah. And don't forget to subscribe.
Thank you.